actually it wouldn't prescribe the powers of the Security Intelligence Service and may actually help build some trust and faith in the institutions.
The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I just wish to raise a couple of issues in Part 4 and invite the Minister's comment on it. Looking first at Section 55A and B, the Section 55A1 describes the conditions under which a Type 1 intelligence warrant may be issued to the Director-General of an agency if the authorising Minister and a Commissioner of Intelligence warrants are satisfied that it's necessary to contribute to national security, protect national assets, etc. The Minister may wish to comment on the decision made by the Select Committee, especially as the Minister is the Attorney-General, to switch the ministerial requirement from that of the Attorney-General to that of the Minister responsible, the Minister for Intelligence and Security. Now, it may be that the same physical person might at some point hold both offices, but it is a definite shift of emphasis away from the judicial oversight role of the Attorney to the more operational oversight role of the Minister. The commentary to the bill makes the point that it's appropriate and useful for the Minister to be intimately acquainted with workings of the organisations, and that the issuing of warrants is a core part of that. But equally, the strengthening of the judicial oversight, which the Attorney might supplement the Commissioner, I imagine would have been a finely balanced decision for the committee at the time. And as the Minister and the Chair is the Attorney-General, I would invite his reflection on that issue. Secondly, Mr Chairman, as we move into the clause 59, that's where we raise that issue about which Minister is responsible. Interestingly, in 60A on page 59 is that an intelligence warrant must specify a period not exceeding 12 months in which it's valid, and in clause 2 of 60A that the expiry of the warrant does not prevent a further application for a warrant in relation to the same activity. The point there, sir, is that there is an extended period of time during which operations may continue pursuant to one activity, and that the renewal facility on the same issue means that it could be an even more extended period of time. I think it underlines to Labor members the seriousness of the warrant issuing powers, which brings us to, I think, a related issue. It's one that's been well traversed in the headline debates on the bill. And as my colleague Grant Robertson said earlier, one of those things is where the rubber meets the roads. This bill, for the first time, codifies the issuing of warrantless surveillance and warrantless intercepts on New Zealand citizens. That's a serious Rubicon to be crossed, and it's a serious thing for this House on a bipartisan basis to approve. Members on this side have thought very carefully about whether to support the authorising legislation for that, and it, I think, behoves me to underline that the balance is a fine one, and that the protections set out in clauses 69 through 73 and on are extremely important to members of the Labor opposition. That is, that the definition of an urgent or a very urgent warrant is tight, that the warrant will be revoked if not explicitly upheld within 48 hours in the context of an urgent or 24 hours in the context of a very urgent, that all warrants must be notified and kept on a register, that the Inspector General must be notified immediately that such an urgent warrant is deemed to be issued, and that any material acquired through such a process must be immediately destroyed and or returned in the event of revocation. An on-balance judgment has been made on a bipartisan basis that in the circumstances which we face, this is an appropriate balance. But I would be remiss if I did not underline that for members on this side of the House, That is a very fine balance to have reached, and that we will be monitoring and we'll be interested to see how this evolves in the annual reporting of the Inspector General and the agency. So I would invite the Minister to comment on the nature of those protections and on the switch from the Minister to from the Attorney to the Departmental Minister.
The Honourable Chris Finnis.